So Dana couldn't be here. She has we brought our two youngest boys, and she said, "I'll take them." But we've been collaborating for quite a while, and we're marriage partners and those kind of things. So I wanted to really kind of focus more on sort of the theoretical background that kind of drives what we're doing. We're both from the School of Journalism and come out of that, sort of professional conventions of journalism, and which usually doesn't employ any kind of formal methodology or formal sort of theoretical position in doing research, and what we do is sort of research and practice. And we've been working with digital technology for quite a while. We did a workshop down in Old Memphis, Alabama, with a blues musician and a social activist group. And we're gonna put it up on the web and all this stuff. And we ended up in the city hall, which was a trailer. And we had to get the phone hooked up. And nobody had a computer in the community. So we ended up doing a VHS tape documentary. But, we've been doing this a while. I'm playing with technology and sort of seeding technology across the digital divide. But I wanted to talk today about what sort of, theory drives our work, and especially with this interactive site, War Poems, that we're presenting here. It's basically a parallax website with some interactive features that started out to be a touch table at the Kimball War Memorial down in the southern coalfields of West Virginia. It's sort of the only one of its kind in the nation, built by black veterans of World War I. And so what guided this is critical race theory. And this is a public research community project exploring the use of database narrative in the process of counter-storytelling, using oral history, critical race theory, and a public history touch interactive project. So this is, all the research we're doing is based on this case study of War Poems and its ongoing work at the memorial. The focus of this is the research, development, and design of the narrative interactive site. It uses a rare book discovered in the process of field research. And I was talking with somebody, often that is very sort of serendipitous, and this happened when we had an exhibit and a woman came up and said, "I have this book of poetry by my late husband's half-sisters," and it was like, "Oh, okay." And we went and looked at it and it was like, whoa, this is something that would really work with digital technology, database narrative, that kind of thing. And because the person who had the book tried to get it republished by a press, and they said, "This is terrible poetry," and it would, like, the quality of the poems aren't the point. At any rate, so we looked at this as a sort of a paradigm shift, probably more for journalism than you all hear, because of the linear nature of journalistic narratives. Let's see. What critical race, I don't know how many are familiar with it, but critical race theory emerged among legal scholars in, sort of the Reagan Revolution of, the 1980s, around attacks, successful legal attacks on affirmative action, sort of a growing acceptance of the idea of reverse discrimination, level playing field, all of those sort of, you know, well, we've helped these people and now, you know, there's equality. And so it came out of legal scholarship because there was successful attacks on these issues. And so scholars such as Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, Mary Masuda, Richard Delgado sought to account for the role of racism in American law and work toward the elimination of racism as a part of a larger goal of eliminating all forms of subordination. So they introduced a unique method of legal analysis based around the importance of the text that's created, the sort of legal text. And they were centered on the perspective of people of color and kind of reflecting those other movements in social science at the time toward sort of dispelling objectivity, looking at, you know, other perspectives that were happening, especially in anthropology, sociology, English literature, I think. Yeah. But what these all share in common, and what we share, was the project of unmasking the objective nature of social research to demonstrate how often is used to justify and entrench the hegemony over the structure of social relations through the narrative that's created. The other part of critical race theories is, in terms of discourse, sort of Eurocentric versions of history rest upon these racialized deficit ideologies that characterize communities of color as being lacking, right? It's, oh, they need more money, more education, more this, more that, you know, that sort of victimization, inferior or lacking somehow, such as intellectual development, the ability to self-govern, all those sorts of things. And although there were progressive variants of that in documentary, sort of the history of social documentary, like the Farm Security Administration, you know, Lewis Hine, those kind of things, with reformist intentions, they acknowledge the socially structured nature of narratives, but they often remain fixed on these tropes of cultural and economic poverty that mute or distort more complex realities of cultural capital, cultural wealth, such as particular kinds of survival skills, abilities and knowledges and strategies of resistance nurtured through, you know, different kinds of associations, social, familial, and or you know, religious or spiritual ties, and practices, oral practices especially. So any kind of counter-storytelling strategy should provide a challenge to that deficit-only or invisible narrative with more nuanced and complex realities foregrounded by the viewpoints and experiences of the people of color. It also takes into account the empirical validity of non-traditional evidence based upon experiential knowledge that you know, based on oral transmission, personal artifacts and images, critical readings of institutionally produced or official text, including visual and audio documents, historical records, and other sorts of archival materials. According to CRT researcher Tara Yasso, the latter, the critical reading of official documents and archival materials, is crucial because of the centrality of institutional power in many
discussion or analysis of racism, mostly because people of color in the United States have rarely, if ever, possessed that authority. So kind of getting onto a more practical aspect of that and an extension of that into other fields. You know, in 2002, Daniel Solorzano and Tariaso published an article, Critical Race Methodology, Counter Storytelling as an Analytical Framework for Education Research. And they were exploring, you know, development of a methodology out of critical race theory in producing narratives of people of color. And they sort of posit these 5 elements that are important for that. One is intercentricity of race and racism with other forms of subordination. Challenge to the dominant ideology, commitment to social justice, centrality of experiential knowledge, and a transdisciplinary perspective. Which means, you know, with these elements in creating war poems, we chose to experiment with this transdisciplinary approach. So we draw from multiple disciplines, seek data from traditional and non-traditional sources, and, you know, juxtapose those. Oral history, personal narratives, and in order to create a new kind of narrative or a new kind of, you know, knowledge. So using digital technologies to create database narrative with interactivity and tactile experiences of a touch surface, we felt would be worth exploring using this theory as, you know, sort of the guiding theory of constructing it and researching and developing it. So it you know, it allows for a more complex story, for parts of the narrative that are contradictory, and some that are, you know, kind of validate common experience. But much of this work has put us at odds with the canons of journalism research, which is mostly the dominant research theoretical model is, you know, effects research. Did we sell this product? Did we, you know, turn children into serial killers? You know, it's this sort of message channel, you know, receiver kind of mode, instead of a more non-linear or networked kind of notion of, you know, learning or putting together a story. We often have our paper submissions and work return to the question, what does this have to do with journalism? And because Dana and I are co-collaborators as well as partners in marriage, we've had each other to commiserate with, you know, in our school and our department. But we've had to reach out to other places and on the campus and other institutions on work poems. We collaborated with Francis Van Scoy in the computer science department, and it really allowed us to kind of, you know, explore different kinds, you know, we have different conventions of working and different language in our discipline. So, you know, speaking across that really helps. I worked with the forensics department to do some analysis of this non-traditional evidence. We had a helmet with some writing on it, and they used a laser to discover that. And we're working on another touch interactive narrative about that. And other folks around campus who are interested in this kind of work. And so, you know, you have to look for these people who drive that work forward. And we feel blessed to attend this conference and meet you all who are doing this interesting work, and with whom we can bitch and moan about being misunderstood, and also kind of celebrate and say, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know you could do that. So, questions from people about the project? Or?
Well, I think we might hold off for questions till the
Oh, okay.
after the third one. But for Joel,